Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, Pete's Carport. It's been kind of a crappy day out today, but the rain that's been going on all day finally let up, and I've been dying to get back to working on the 63 Austin Healey Sprite. So let's go ahead and jump right in. So something I've been wanting to do a video on for like the last week or so is installation and how to set up the water temperature gauge as well as the oil pressure gauge. Now these are from Iequus. And they're pretty common. You can get them at most of the auto parts stores. I think I picked these up at AutoZone. But both the gauges are kind of basic setup. You might want to drill your hole for your dash if you don't already have them. And then they both come kind of pre-wired. Like the water one comes with a wire that you cannot take off the back, so it'll be bundled up. And I'm going to show you how that gets installed. First, that one, you basically run it through the firewall. This is how the wire is going to look. And on this vehicle specifically, you're going to run it right into this section of your block. Now that is right below where your radiator is, your thermostat, and all that. And this should have a plug that looks similar to this that goes into there right from the factory. Now there's also going to be a slit in there, and it's going to look like you can use a Phillips head. I took it out with some vice grip pliers. It was pretty snug in there, but I did get it out. And then the end of the water line, the water pressure, I'm sorry, the water temperature gauge is going to have a nut like this. And I got very fortunate that this nut fit right into the block. Now it does come with some adapters just in case your block has a different size nut that's there. And basically you'll put the adapter in first, and this will screw right into the top of that adapter. So pretty self-explanatory. This has the temperature rod thing on it, and that slides right in the block. Now with mine, I took off the cap, and behind it was a wall of black crud. Not sure what it was, something I've never seen before. But at first I thought that there was actually no access into the block. I just figured somehow, some crazy way, this block was blocked off and I wouldn't be able to put a temperature gauge in. And I realized it was gunk when I looked at the other end of the cap that was on there. It was covered in like an oily gunk. And so I basically tapped it with a screwdriver, and it just started pouring out water. Now that water was quite disgusting. I could tell it was not coolant. It was water because there was no odor coming from it. And so we're also going to flush our radiator system today. And I also could see down in here there was some rust spots from basically overheating or whatever, splashing up of the coolant, which is just water that was put in there. Now, the second gauge, so you can see that's pretty simple. That's pretty self-explanatory to get that water gauge in. You might have some difficulty getting that nut off of the block. Now, the next thing is the oil gauge. Now, the oil gauge has a line on the back of this that you can remove because it's just a pressure line. And it's a clear line, and it runs right through the firewall just like you're going to run the other one. And that line is going to be right here. Now I've got mine up through some hose line here, so that's nice and tucked away. But it does go right through the firewall right there, right where all my other wires come through. And then that screws in right underneath where your oil filter line and stuff goes. So this right here goes to my oil filter. I do have a converted oil filter housing, so it is a little bit different than what you might have. But you're going to have once again, another bolt right here. If you don't have an oil pressure gauge, mine did have an oil pressure gauge that was on here at one point. It might have had a water temperature gauge as well, but that was just capped off. And this was just broken off. So it was broken off right there, so I was leaking oil from time to time right down into the under of the engine. So got my oil pressure gauge hooked up. Now you want to make sure you tighten that really nicely up in there. The instructions do not say to put any type of Teflon or any type of sealant on there. I'm going to see how that goes. When I remove this here, you do lose some coolant, so be careful to put a tray underneath there as you take that out. Obviously do both of these when the engine is nice and cool. You definitely do not ever want to do anything that has to do with coolant when the engine's hot, because it's very, very easy to burn yourself. That does spill out pretty fast. Now on to the flush. So on the flush side of things, this is what my coolant or water looks like right now. So the goal is to get that to be clear, and then we're eventually going to be adding the concentrate with our distilled water. But the first step is to run just distilled water and this Prestone flush cleaner. Now, for a full flush, if you have a really bad, dirty, grimy system, you want to run this for approximately 3 days, a few hours a day is what it says, normal driving, and up to a week or so of driving, and then you basically drain it all out and you add your coolant, or you flush it out once again with water, which is what we're going to do. So we're going to basically run this, distilled water, a few days. We're going to try to drive it around as much as we can, up to a week, and then we're going to empty that out. We're going to run distilled water through it, run it around the block, empty it out, see what that looks like, and then we're going to add our additive. Now, I'm not a huge fan of all these crazy additives that come out, but I have been testing out the coolant additives because all of them are pretty much usable on any vehicle, which is great. They don't void any type of warranty, and so we're going to see how that works. We're in Florida, and it gets very hot, so anything we can do to keep these cars cooled down. I am going to be driving this car hard on back roads, and I don't want it overheating, so now we can see the temperature as we're driving, and we'll be able to know if this is going to work. We also have the Prestone, this is the concentrate, so you want to 50-50 it with distilled water. So I'm going to go ahead and add the Prestone, the water, and we'll drive it around for a while. I'll give you guys an update video when I drain this out so you can see that. But that pretty much wraps up this video. I could not find anywhere online on these Austin Healey's, MGs, kind of all the same motor. I'm sure the Triumphs and those ones too are going to have a very similar location, along with probably tons and tons of other motors out there. And I knew it said in the instructions it goes into the block, but it was not real specific on where to look, and I knew it had to be along the lines of where the coolant goes in, so it was kind of self-explanatory to me that it goes right there. But if you need to know where it goes and you're new to this engine, that is where your coolant temperature gauge will go, and your oil pressure gauge is going to go on the other side of that. So hopefully this helps somebody out there that's looking to add those gauges and just picked up a car and there was no gauges. Okay guys, so before I end the video, I actually ran the car for 3 days with the engine flush in it, and this is what came out of the first one, which was some mucky brown nasty stuff. And even worse, I ran it with just distilled water for, you know, till it got hot and cooled down, and that came out. And I ran it one more time with distilled water and got this. So at that point I realized they either put an additive in there, or the heater core, which on this vehicle is this box back here, and I might actually reroute that and mount it somewhere else, and I'll explain that. But right now I'm just running a straight hose with the radiator, basically your drain plug release, the radiator drain plug pulled off, and it's now coming out clear. So I'm gonna basically now fill it back up with some distilled water, probably run it, drain it, and then I'm going to add the actual coolant with the additive and the distilled water, since I got the concentrate. Now back to the heater core back here, why I'm going to reroute this. So basically this is all no longer functioning because it used to run as a heater. So this would basically get air through here that then would go through the hot air here and then go into the vehicle to give the car heat. Obviously, I do not need that in Florida at all. This is going to be a weekend driving fun car, so I'll never use the heat. The top will be down almost all the time. So my first thought was there is even a turn-off valve here to turn it off. I was thinking about doing that, and then I read online that you do not want to remove this or turn that valve off because you're going to overheat your fourth cylinder and have some major issues. So what a lot of people do, and what they did in the race cars, which is what the route that I'm going with this car, is obviously remove this box and then reroute this to the front to act as a secondary cooling, because basically the coolant or water is going to flow through there just like it flows through the radiator and begin to cool off. And that's why it is 100% necessary to have that running, or your back of your block is going to get too hot. So what I'm going to do is remove the box and then reroute that to the front. I may even install a smaller version of that if I can't fit it, but I think I've got enough room to mount it somewhere up here to receive some cold air coming through the front here and act as an extra cooling unit. So basically that ends the video. I wanted to show you guys how nasty that was. Now, doing some research online, there was another gentleman's video I came across. He had the same issue, and he said that that was a stop leak, and it looks very similar to what he was getting. I'm really hoping it wasn't. I do know that they only ran water in the system due to the fact that there was no coolant smell in what I drained the first time. So hopefully we can get this system back to what it should be, keeping it very cool. Now, I was not overheating. That is the good thing. Just by driving around for about 20 minutes, but it was getting up to about 190 in temp, and I want to keep it closer to 180 even if I am driving it pretty hard, just because I want to keep this engine as cool as possible so the life along of it lasts longer. But once again, my name's Pete. I hope this video helped you guys out. Anybody out there with one of these cars, an MGB, or just needing to flush your system, hopefully this kind of fills you guys in on how to get that done. Have a great day. Once again, like, subscribe, and share, guys.